So on behalf of Kaustav and we welcome you to this series of fireside chat series that we're doing on data and desire for VisioNxt. Just to quickly tell you what VisioNxt is, Nari. VisioNxt is a project which is supported by Ministry of Textiles, but is conceived, designed, and is being executed by NIFT. It is an AI and EI-enabled forecasting. We are in the process of creating this model which will work for our country. So we believe that this is a country which is so plural and so complex, and it's beautiful, and we need to look within. For years, we have looked outside, and we have only looked at concepts and trends coming from these international agencies, and it's time we start looking within and delving into what is us. It's been happening for quite some time, but making it into an institutionalized and formal kind of manner.
Why we don't have our own forecast companies? Why does a foreign company have to do? But what has happened now is, in between all of this, while there was forecasting in the old world, in the old terms that were there is also data and data collecting, which has become such an part. You know, it's like skipping the computer and going straight from the landline to the mobile phone.
Yeah, true. So, it's like we kind of did away with one particular G in between and just jumped to the 3G, you know.
But, you know, while it is exciting and all of this, I also believe that how it is harnessed is really important. It can be put to both good and bad use, you know. True. So, and one can see it across the globe that how it's being used in nefarious ways. But if we have the vision and if the input is good, I'm sure AI will drive an output that is good too.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We also agree with the same point. Yeah, go ahead.
Having said that, Nari, I also want to touch upon something which is personal here.
Right.
This is for, you know, I mean, taking you back to circa 1989. I was a student straight out of school and really wanted to join NIFT. A world had suddenly opened up because somebody had put that little brochure, the first prospectus in my hand, and that world never existed before that.
Right.
And I toddled to NIFT, finding out where this institute is. Right. And in my school uniform, and there were all these people hanging out there. And the only person I thought I could get some information out was the guard. So I hesitantly asked him that I want to get into this institute and I don't know what to do and what do I do about it? And I want to talk to somebody. So he looks around, thinks about it, and looks at me because I was a little girl. And he says, unse baat kar lijiye. And unse was you. And you were busy talking with some friends at that time. So I waited till I could get you alone.
This was NIFT in Dadar, Bombay.
No, this was NIFT in Delhi,
There I was there.
Yeah, you were a student at that time. And so I waited for you to go to the cafe, and then I followed you there, and I just tentatively spoke to you. And I said, look, I want to get into NIFT, and would you help me? So you asked me a whole lot of questions at that time, and he said, you need to have a portfolio. So I told you that I do have a portfolio, but I haven't got it. He says, come back with your portfolio and we'll chat then. And I dutifully got back with my portfolio. And you spent a long time sitting with me, going through it, telling me how to improve it and what to do and how to tackle the interview panel that I'm going to be meeting and how they're going to be dealing with it. And
no, this is really nice, kind of you to remember. Very, very kind of you to remember. I'll tell you something. The thing that, you know, teaching has been the best part of my entire career. I have done many different things. including being GQ's best men's designer, or one of the 50 in the world. But nothing has given me more satisfaction than teaching or helping people. I believe that, I also came from a background that was nowhere connected to all of this. And I found myself in this place. I worked towards it. Not many people know my own story in this whole thing, I mean, people get into NIFT being students early on from their 12th standard and all that. I worked for 6 years outside.
Yeah.
Selling glass bottles, selling photocopies at 15 paisa a copy in Bombay, all of that. Post that, I got into NIFT.
Yes.
One day I heard that NIFT was opening, but they said that, you needed at least a first class in 12th standard or a 60%.
Yeah.
I had neither. I failed in my 12th standard, but they said you 1 year's experience, and that also would be good to check, And the day I saw the ad that came in the newspaper with 1 year's experience, I quit my job. I was then a marketing manager for a large company for 5 years.
Wow.
And my parents never spoke to me. My mom said, what the hell? I mean, you are like 19 or doing this. You're here out there, and you're just getting up and just getting, and to get that experience from drawing around 15,000 then per month, I got my first job in the fashion industry at 400 rupees a month.
Yeah.
I used to salwar kameez. But I did that for the experience. And then I went for the interview. Luckily, even interview people told me, there was excuse me, even interview, people told me that, aren't you a little too old to do this course? But I've quit my, you are not going to give me this admission. That doesn't matter. I'm going to do fashion with you or without you.
Yeah.
But today I got a green postcard that came in, inland postcard.
Yes.
It was the day that changed my life. It gave me voice. It gave me courage to speak my mind and express everything that I felt. So NIFT has been fantastic for me, and I would do anything for NIFT.
Yeah.
I am here.
I remember that because you told me you are 18 and I'm 27. He says, you better be serious. Look at me. And you are just starting out. And I was like, but I really want to do it. He says, you better go and work for a little while and come back. And I was like, why is he telling me all this? And, but yeah, I guess I didn't get through that year. I got through the next year. And, but such is history.
Oh, lovely, interesting story. Such a nice anecdote. And very touching. Thank you so much.
I think Nari has been passionate about mentoring students, because I remember Nari and we all met during the Images Retail Meet. That time, Mr. Gita was our DG, and
Right.
I was there. Right. And Nari spoke about designers should come back and start mentoring the students, because that is where they will get a very big opportunity to interact. Academics is passionately doing that for me. So yes, that I think is something adds to your persona. Yeah.
No, I love it. And I think giving back is really the best thing that I have done and continue to do.
Yes, thank you so much. So in addition to that, Nari, you've also been an activist of your own in your own right. I mean, when I looked at your collections in the past, every time you've always taken up an issue, a very important message that you've tried to communicate. And the medium of communication and the manner of communication have also been strong enough to make a statement. It's layered. It's conveying. It's also interplaying with different mediums. I mean, you have looked at film with fashion. You've looked at, you have looked at all these layers, not just in the characters, but also looked at those layers and kind of juxtaposed it with the world of fashion. We want to know more about that.
So, important thing about that, I always believe clothes mean nothing without a story.
True.
And that was when I started out. Also, I thought about it that today more so, for a generation that is more aware about climate, about stuff around, stories are an important part. People want to belong to something. It's no longer putting on something over you and going that, And I also thought that, as a designer, you need to have your ears on the ground, and I will tell you an interesting anecdote about that too. Bombay Times had this front page article of the top 10 party people in the city. And I was number 2 in Bombay. but, and that's because every time somebody opened up a Bombay Times, I was getting photographs on the page. Because I used to attend of the best part one night kind of stuff. So, but what I did was, everywhere I went, I found one person who I could talk to completely for that evening, understand their thought process, convey my thought process to them. And so today, there's a word in German that's called Zeitgeist. It's about capturing the spirit of the times. And this is what a designer and artist does, or is meant to do, capture the spirit of the times, So I have friends who are, chefs, musicians, writers, artists, poets, bankers, builders, all of that, and all my stories come from listening to people, and I think that, for me, the most interesting part for me when I started out was at a time when India was opening up, post 1991, and how that economic change affected social change in the country. So our shows were always about what was happening around me in the country, what was happening around the world, what were the new influences that were coming into the country, and building that into a story of clothes that were relevant to the times that we live in, or slightly ahead. And people used to tell me, Nari, you have like 35 different ideas in one collection. And most people don't see it. I must also say that, because when I did my final collection for NIFT, this is what I did. I mean, I had mentors who were like Issey Miyake, Galliano, Gautier. All of these people there were multiple mentors that, because each one taught me something different. Issey Miyake spoke about space and time. Yoji Yamamoto spoke about the intellect. Azrin Alaya and Claude Montana spoke about tailoring. Gautier spoke about fun. And so a lot of my idea and design is today an amalgamation of all those ideas, and being responsive to the environment that I live in. And if you see, I did a film recently. One of our films that we did was opened a film festival in Brisbane.
Okay.
It's on YouTube. It's called The Marriage of Shaila Patel. And it's a 20-minute film. And the film talks about the times that we live in. The story about it was around a cocktail wedding collection that I made, but I wove it around the story of what's happening today in the age of Me Too, the world opening up. How is that affecting, people, Indians who are now living abroad, coming back and settling into an environment in India? And millennials, there's another film called The Millennials about how what does it mean to be a millennial and how acceptability works or not. There is also the latest film, really a very, very interesting one that all students should see. I will share this with you when I get your numbers. It is called 2 + 2 = 5.
Oh, lovely.
That's
And what
nice.
is it that about?
And it is based on 2 books, one written in 1931 and the other written in 1949. One of the book is called 1949, written by what's his name? George Orwell.
Okay.
And the
Which
other
one?
is by Aldous Huxley, called The Brave New World. So the film revolves, it's a fashion film. It's a political scenario seen through a fashion. And both books talk about dystopian world where institutions are controlling people's minds.
Oh, that is so valid today.
That's interesting.
That is so valid today.
Look at Google. I mean, you look at China, Russia, Hungary, Poland, Turkey, Brazil, all over the world. This is spreading.
So true.
And that is really what fashion to me means. To being responsive to what we do, but yet presenting it in a way that young people will understand, and or to tell your story, and that's what this film is about. 2 + 2 = 5. It is it's a really famous book, and coincidentally, George Orwell was a student of Aldous Huxley.
Oh,
Wow.
interesting.
And George Orwell was born in India, went back to UK to study at Eton at one of the schools, then went to become a police, imperial police in Burma, got tired of it, went back to UK, lived in Manchester with in the shanties of coal miners to write their story. Then covered the Spanish Civil War as a reporter, joined the war with the communists to fight the fascists, and then wrote about 1948 about how the communists were bad.
That's interesting.
Maverick.
It is amazing. It's amazing. And more than anything, those books are so relevant to the world that we live in today.
Today, that's so true.
And that is the most important. And that is the most important thing I believe that students should have today, is the courage to stand up. Because a lot of what we do is being driven by data. I mean, everyone talks about the rabbit hole that Facebook takes you into or YouTube takes you into. And that's how it is. Data throws out more of what you like.
Yeah.
Data can't do what you should like next.
True.
Right? So that is the difference, So therefore, I believe while we all expound the technology and data and becoming great, I mean, simple question. India, 1,400 million people. If you automate everything or a lot of these things, where will your bankers go? Where will your truck drivers go? Where will your taxi drivers go? Where will your farmers go? What jobs will they have?
Yeah.
Can we afford it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can we afford it? So, it's important how people look at data, not swallow it blindly, but see how you can harness it for the betterment of people. We celebrate big technology because automates everything, but we don't look at the other side of the kind of hindrance it's going to create in a country like ours, especially in a country like ours. And one needs to understand how to look at data in the context of something like this. Not many people talk about this. Everybody is looking ahead, but nobody is looking at the side of what, while data drives through everything, everyone is being pushed aside.
True.
And these are ordinary lives of ordinary people.
True.
And what does that result in? In the end, it results in chaos and commotion. So what that is important, and that's what fashion truly means. I'm lucky that I can speak about all of these things through a platform like fashion. And that surmises how I have thought, and I continue to think about all of these things. A lot of people tell me, how can you, working Amazon, think like this? It's a paradox, but it's important to weigh that side too. It's important to think about it. It's important to me. I'm almost like towards the end of my career. There's a lot of people who are just starting out their career and they have what is going to happen for the next 40, 60 years of their life. Most people also don't realize that 20 years ago, if one had AIDS, you were dead. Now you don't hear of anybody dying of AIDS.
True.
What is going to happen 20 years from now? Even if you want to die, you won't be allowed to die because insurance company makes money on you.
Yes.
That means that you will be one will be healthy from 21 till the next, 80 years? Till they're 80, at least you will have to work and then live till 20. How do you traverse life in such a situation? The toughest part is that we all learned and grew up over what our parents learned from their parents over the last 350 years post the Industrial Revolution. What internet and technology has done has collapsed that 350 years into 2 years or 5 years. And the future really is about everybody saying, students, is every 2 years you have to upgrade, upskill. You have to all your life. It's all companies in the US. People are telling them already out there that if you don't upskill, you have to find something else. So it is very many different things for young students to understand how to measure life, how to value what they do, and how to traverse that 80 years of their working life or 60 years of their working life going ahead. I mean, it might sound ominous, but that is what we are driving towards. We don't want to die. That's what we're right. And so it is important thing to keep that perspective in mind and then chart your career. What is it? Do you want to be a CEO in 15 years? And then what for the next 45 years? How many CEOs are there in the world? How many companies are going to be there? So one really needs to plan. It's not easy, but one needs to look at it. Earlier, you could say, okay, when I'm after working 20 years, I'll be a CEO, or 25 years, I'll do stuff. And today you can't do that anymore. Our technology is changing. And to be on top of it, you need to be qualified.
And we also don't learn to pause. We're not learning to pause. We're not learning to reflect.
That's what I meant, that, this is part of teaching, that students to be told that this is what life is going to. A lot of people just look at what is going to be tomorrow when they get out of school. But tomorrow was not like yesterday or so. Tomorrow is a collapse moment in time. And technology has a big role in how it is going to be shaped.
Right. Maybe in the same line, I will pick up, Nari. One of my favorite book is this one. This is called Street Style by Ted Polomus.
Yes,
Ted has been my mentor. He is a fashion anthropologist.
I love that.
We wrote something together. Yeah. So interestingly, in this book, in the page 7, what Ted has written, saying that about fashion, saying that oozing through the clothes, hairstyles, makeup, and accessories is an attitude.
Right.
So will you do you think that fashion is more of an attitude, desire, and identity,
No,
rather than what we are trying to talk about fashion now? So do you think fashion is more about that's more
I think as we get,
before that has to be.
you're
I think
breaking
Kaustav, you're breaking.
the question. I think that fashion is today more about expressing yourself. And if you see how young people today are so much more aware about everything around them, they know much more than me or
Yeah.
people other than that, you know. So how do you harness that? Fashion for me has always been about expressing who you are. Clothes, you can either take it or leave it, but it occupies 90% of your body. And, you know, and you don't really get to tell people anything about yourself until you start speaking for half an hour at least. But clothes, on the other hand, can tell someone about you
Immediately.
within seconds. You know, there's a famous book by Malcolm Gladwell called, in 15 seconds, one sizes up the person in front of you. And then you spend your lifetime either proving right or proving wrong. You know? So fashion is something that is more to express yourself. To me, I can tell my fashion journey through the color changes I have. I've gone through gray periods. I've gone through color periods. I've gone. The only thing that I have never done is gone through a black period.
I relate to that. I relate to that.
Black to me means nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it just says I'm inconsequential. Yeah. So you know, and so it goes for everything. The food you eat also is based on the colors that your eye sees before you taste. Yeah. So color is an important part of life.
Yeah.
How you play with it is really important because you can tell so many different stories through those colors. You know, it could be pop colors, it could be saturated, desaturated colors, it could be so many different things that you can look at. And color is an important part for me, has been, and I used to think, you know, that I was very bad with color. You know, very bad means I could live with beige and khaki and beige and khaki and beige. That was the time when, you know, .com era was becoming big and everybody was just wearing t-shirts and this was all American culture in India and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's where I thought, and I fought against myself to say, I am going to challenge myself to bring color into my life, yeah, into my collections. And now people know me. People know if it is color, it's not. It's going to be there.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so, you know, one finds different ways to tell stories. And that is what is interesting, you know. It is not just about making a collection or another. Sometimes it is the color, sometimes it is the music, sometimes it's the theme, sometimes, you know, it's the intellect. This, sometimes it's a book. There are so many different ways to tell a story. And that is really, and it has been an important part for me. And I believe going forward for all young kids is really important that you build and learn to tell a story. It does not have to be one story all your life. It's too boring.
Yeah.
Stories evolve with you as a person.
True.
Evolve with taste. Your stories can evolve too.
Yeah. So how do you look at the whole, how do you look at, through that lens, how do you look at India as the creative director of Amazon then? Because India is full of colors. Like there is no craziness less than that, you know. I mean, it's.
So I'll tell you about Amazon. Sorry. So Amazon did, when they called me number of times. They called me twice, thrice. I said no the first time. I said no the second time. And then I spoke to some of the heads of the business. I spoke to the global head. I spoke to about 8-10 global directors of Amazon, including Jeff second in command and all that. And then I finally spoke to the head of Amazon business in India. And he said to me, Nari, why would you want to work with Amazon? You are famous. You designed for Mr. Bachchan. You are Esquire's 50 best men's designer. Why would you want to do? And my answer to him then was, this was the job just for a creative director for fashion. My answer to him was, how many people get a chance to change the way 1 billion people live? How many? Not many people get that. 1 billion people don't need mobile phones. 1 billion people don't need their own houses. 1 billion people don't need their own cars. 1 billion people need clothes.
Clothes.
So vision, and that's the second part of it. Vision is important. How do you build that vision is really important in driving one's career going ahead. It is not about the next job, but it's having a larger vision and then saying, how do I fit into it? Instead of looking up into the vision, you create the vision and then say, what is my role in that vision? How do I fill my space in it? And then what do I do to reach there? More so today, because there are 1 million visions today in this country, 1 billion visions. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to start their own stuff, which is great, which is how, that is the ideal world. So everyone earns for themselves in that way. But for that, you need to have some perspective of what the world is going to be like in the next 20 years, and then work from there towards building that career. And it's outside looking in, not inside looking out. You create the field, and that vision can change. But you need a big vision for you to get somewhere close to it. Else you will just be going from one step to another step. So 2 things. Number 1, zeitgeist. Number 2, vision.
Vision.
Yeah, it is important to understand that. And today vision for a lot of people is accessible all over the place. You can read about it. And I must tell you that over the last 2 years, what COVID has done to me has opened my mind in 1 million different ways. Opened my mind in 1 million different ways. I have been sitting at lectures in Stanford, in MIT, in Oxford, listening to some real smart people talk about how the world is connected from your neurology, psychology, philosophy, art to product.
True.
So a deeper thought is what COVID has done for me. And I was wondering after all of this, at some point my head was bursting with so much knowledge. I needed to find people to talk to. What it has done, it allows me new ideas, new ways of thinking laterally. And most people don't know, films like Inception and stuff like that. Those are learnings that people are understanding in psychology in Stanford and MIT and converting films. Ideas that come to us. That's where big ideas come from.
Yeah.
And how to connect the dots is really important. Really, that is the most important part. Is while you read so many different things, and today you need to be the jack of one. Sorry, you need to be the master of one, but jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades, yeah.
Because no role is permanent.
There's no permanency.
No role is permanent anymore.
Yeah. But you got into interdisciplinary way back, even before, the designers here were talking about interdisciplinary approach of of fashion. So yeah, you
know what,
tested it out.
If you don't have it, your ideas are all siloed. You just look at the same thing again
Absolutely.
and again and again, and it becomes boring.
Absolutely.
The other part, the third word that I wanted to say is evolution.
Right.
You need to evolve with time to be relevant as a designer. You cannot be someone that you were 50 years ago and think that the world is moving fast ahead. You need to move ahead, and you need to evolve. Take your thinking with you, but you have to speak to a new generation.
True.
Yeah. So, so much so that that film worked for me, that I got myself a
tattoo.
Wow.
my
Nice.
my life.
Yeah, lovely.
And why don't you get a small thing, test it out, and say, I think it's either go big or don't go anywhere.
That's a good one. Yeah, you must read this book. I don't know whether you've read this book, When Breath Becomes Air. It's another beautiful book by this neurosurgeon,
Right.
who was also he went on to do his PhD in literature.
Right.
Simultaneously, he decided while he was there, he decided that, he always was interested in brain, the way the brain works. And he decided that he was interested in neurosurgery as well. So he was a very well-known neurosurgeon from Stanford. And then eventually he himself was detected with cancer.
Right.
So he died very young. So this book was actually written when he got to know that he has been detected. I mean, he himself knew the symptoms.
Right.
And that was writing a book was on his bucket list. So he started writing, and he wrote like crazy because he knew the kind of time he had. But what's beautiful is because he has done literature and he's poetic, his manner of writing about cancer and about neurosurgery, about brains and manner of working makes it so relatable to a common person that you almost fall in love with the whole world out there,
There you go. I'm just saying that is important, interdiscipline, especially for an artist or a designer, is really important that you get input from many different things in life. When you're young, probably you don't think about so many different things, but people like you, faculty and me, are there to help them, show them this, and especially now is a time where students really require help, because not many of them can comprehend what the world will be in the next 15 years. With sustainability, environment, all of that, how they're going to traverse that path and choose what they want to do really is singularly important.
True.
Singular. And I would think that NIFT should have people from different parts outside of design come and talk to students and talk about what the next 10 years, 15 years, how do they see the world evolving, because that for them, apart from learning the skills, will give them the confidence to deal with whatever they see going ahead. And really, I would think that this is something that people should be taught in schools. It is not thought about that, but it should be something that students should have a guest lecture from somewhere, talk about this, connected to desire, connected to stuff, understand. It's like invoking the curiosity.
So do you think?
Nari, I was just going to pick up that point, saying that this is going to be your second series. We want to bring you in and bring our young transporters. We have around 250 transporters who's working in the trend. And maybe it will be interesting to interact with them, and you can talk about what's going to happen in the future and how it works. That is going to be our second series. We were requesting you, but you just took up the point, because that's exactly what we want. Because what happens is that if we can invoke this, curiosity among the young minds, who's going to look at trend in a bigger way. And there are NIFT students, but they have chosen trend spotting as one of the scenarios. So
Yeah.
maybe it will be interesting to, talk about what's going to happen in future, in long term, in short term. It will be very interesting and integrating for them also to interact with you.
Important thing,
Actually,
how
it's
Yeah, go ahead.
about patterns. We would be very keen if you make them understand spotting patterns around, crazy patterns around, interesting patterns around.
so this is when you said, Kaustav, about the gentleman that you quoted from the book. You know,
Yeah.
I call myself an anthropological fashion designer
Wow.
because I've charted through my career how society has evolved and what are the cues that people are looking for. You know,
Right.
this is for me, that is really important. You know, that what people wear in corners, what are the kind of stuff that are the beginning of a cycle. You know, really identifying the beginning of a cycle is really important. But what are the things that affect that cycle in the beginning to create that cycle is really more important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For example, you see sneakers with these chunky sneakers, right? That are in the rage right now. You know,
Right.
where did it come from? From those transporter or transponder films where there were these chunky things walking around.
Yeah.
That's where it came from. You know, sometimes films affect thought, sometimes thoughts affect films. There are different ways of looking at, spotting the right film that talks about the right thing, spotting the right emotion is really important too. Where you see the current, where you see the undercurrent, those are the things that really give shape to your thought. It's another thing to me, a lot of things tell me is when I go to a car company and see the colors on the car, I can tell what society is looking at.
True.
Earlier it used to be all white because that was considered with purity, and politicians wore white. Today nobody cares a damn about that. We are all going to homes that look like hotels.
Yeah.
And that is because our environment is getting smaller and smaller. We want to look like we are in a cold space that does not tell anything about us.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things that happen, there are macro level ideas that happen and there are micro level ideas. So trend spotting is an important part, and I don't know if you guys attend this trend hunter stuff that happens. It's a good place to see a lot of new things that are coming up, and but capturing that, creating that sense in India really is what has happened in the West. Is they have created the desire already,
Right.
for it, and now they're milking it in different ways.
True.
In India,
yes, that's what my point is.
In India, we need to identify the big desires. We need to propagate the big desires. And, a lot of us are now looking inward towards India. And you can see it. I mean, if you look at it at Fashion Week, and I started Fashion Week in India, from when we started off, 80% of the collections were Indian wear, 20% Western wear.
True.
As we moved along, we started looking for validity from the West. So 80% of the collections became Western wear, 20% Indian wear. Today, we know while we still look for validity from the West, we are more happy to look inwards. You are seeing a fusion of what's happening with global trends. And what has happened is accessibility has changed over the last 20 years also. The internet is free and you get information when it happens, within seconds of it happening, right? And so there are influences that are much more larger, coupled with the idea, simple story, another thing that most people don't know. India has the largest Gen Z population in the world, 452 million, bigger than China, bigger than anything else. Next 10 years is going to be about them. right?
Right.
We're talking about the millennials. But here we're sitting on a whole bunch of younger people whose influences are completely different. And how do, what happens to them? And if I were to ask you today, tell me one brand that talks to them.
Nobody.
Nobody.
Yeah. Nobody.
Nobody.
102 million people. No, not one big brand.
Yeah, true.
Can you imagine the size of the market out there?
So it's very interesting that we've been talking to different people and just also been reading up. Constantly, the whole element of desire is what is fundamental to all people in this world of design, being the first point where anything begins. And yet a question is, do you think data is taking over emotions here?
In a large way, data is and will take over this emotion. That's why we need to be on our guard. That's why we need to be careful, because what is the role of data? Data's role is to give you more of what they see. I mean, like companies today analyze, okay, I'm selling yellow, sell more yellow, give more yellow to people, forecast more yellow. When does that yellow stop? Right? Or we are selling so much of blue, let's add some more blue on this.
But that's sales forecasting, isn't it?
That is what data is doing, right? But that is they're forecasting more of the same things. So when it happens on terms of, there are slow moving items when it comes to forecast and fast moving items. Slow moving items are colors don't change overnight.
Yeah.
Colors take a while to fade in and fade out. There are highlight colors that come in, and the rest are the main colors that live in, right? That is an important part of what happens. That you can see, that you don't need an algo to tell you.
True.
Yeah, but there are other things like, trends, like athleisure. I mean, that is that is associated with youth. That is going nowhere until you have a second skin. It also came in with the idea of comfort, because pandemic, because of being at home, and also because a generation of people who are much more conscious of their health.
Yes.
That is the macro trend. So if you identify 10 micro trends like that, and then work backwards into how those trends transfer into products, would be a good place to look at things from.
Yeah. I also think, Nari, the point that you spoke about earlier, that we took 350 years to learn what we had to learn, and it was a linear kind of a learning experience. And there is this generation who has capsuled this 350 years by virtue of the metaverse that's available to them.
Right.
Therefore, they do not come with any kind of predefined stereotypes with regards to clothing or occasion or how they need to be seen in terms of image making. So there is this whole generation of Gen Z that is actually looking at creating their own norms, so to say.
So look at young people today, big stuff, environmentally conscious.
True.
But the paradox is, nobody wants to pay that price. We all talk about this, but we won't spend. You can't spend because one, half this country barely gets food to eat. You can't ask them to be sustainable. Two, you get a sustainable outfit that costs 15,000. You'll wear it 4 times a year.
Yeah.
How are you being sustainable? Right? But one needs to marry those two paths to see how it is more accessible and more real, and what is realistic when it comes to that. You can't be exactly on this side or that side, because not being aware environmentally is a no option. But how do you transit to being aware, and how does this young generation especially ask more questions? This is what they are doing. They're asking questions of brands. where you come from, what you're doing, are you giving back, what is the, all of that stuff. This is what will happen over the next 10 years. How are brands preparing for that? How is design preparing for that? And I wanted to come back to what you guys said. Students are going to live in a life. More crucial is for the faculty to relearn what they have learned, because the faculty comes with 350 years.
Yeah.
Right? So how open a mind you have about meeting your students halfway.
Yeah.
And sometimes I believe that, teaching in some parts and world is about my way or the highway. And it's important that doesn't work anymore.
No. Actually, it's collective learning. There is no teaching.
There is
collective learning. There is collective learning. We are learning as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the important thing, And I am, I think, on a chat on next week or 12th with the new industry.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
This is what I'm going to tell them, that this is important, that you probably have much more open a mind than the students themselves have.
Yeah.
While your path is just about guidance, saying these are the many options. If you take this will happen. If you take that will happen. But it's yours to choose from.
Yeah, Nari, we've taken a lot of your time, but one last question I'm going to ask you and take you back to the last comment you made in terms of being able to balance between the creative and the practical there. How do you, as a creative head, go about marrying these two elements when you look at communicating a creative vision, but you also balance your
So the important thing to understand is it's not a one thing project. It's a long project. Over time it shapes up, especially given what we are. But also an important understand, you have to keep the consumer in mind first.
Yes.
It's really important to keep the consumer in mind. You start with the consumer and then you build their appetite over time. You give them what they like, but you also introduce new stuff to them that can shape their desire. But you can't force it down anybody anymore.
Beautiful.
Very beautiful.
It is not what you can do anymore. And it's really, and that's how I started my career. I must also say that it was just everything in my head, and I said, I will do what I want. But I really, at the end of the day, I was not selling. So I said, okay, I need to now, if I want to create a business, I want to appeal to a larger number of people.
Yeah.
I need to be more accessible to them on their terms and then bring them into my world.
Right.
And if you see, what are the big brands today? If you see a Levi's, if you see a Calvin Klein, if you see all of these large brands, what are they? They have a brand ideology, but they're selling shirts.
Yes, that's true.
So you're buying that ideology. And that is where storytelling is so important.
Yeah.
What do you stand for? What does your brand stand for? That is what people buy, because you cannot make different clothes for everybody. There's only limited amount of that you can do.
True.
To be acceptable or reachable to a large, especially given a blank slate like 1,400 million people, you need to have a real open mind.
Yeah.
Look at them, and it's really starts from the consumer. Yeah. And this is how it has evolved for me over a period of time, and especially at Amazon, while you look at what they do, that is why today Amazon is a trusted word.
Yeah.
It's almost, and if Amazon has just, instead of trust, you say Amazon.
Yeah. No, I just read something in one of the reports when they were talking about AI integration into Amazon. The important thing they spoke about was that you look at the context rather than the content. So there is this whole focus towards consumer personalization that is very, very critical. So again, there itself, one goes by what you're saying. Consumer is really important in terms of.
It has been. And, when I met Jeff, we also said that, Nari, you have a vision, and that's why you are with us. And I've been lucky to have met him twice personally. Once he invited me to his house in Santa Monica. And fine gentleman, really fine gentleman, worked hard, brilliant idea, and pursued it. And that's the other thing, you need to be able to have the courage to pursue things against all odds.
Odds, yeah.
That is perseverance is a strength that everybody should have.